On 7th of October 2023, Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel from the Palestinian territory of Gaza. During the attack, Hamas gunmen killed more than 200 people, including women and children, and took over 150 people as hostages. In response, Israel carried out airstrikes, targeting what it claimed were Hamas installations in Gaza. According to officials in the Palestinian-controlled area, more than 1,000 people, including some children, were killed, and thousands were wounded on both sides. In this video, I will thoroughly discuss the origin of the conflict between these nations, the biblical root, as all this conflict can be traced back to the Bible. The complex history of the Israel-Palestine conflict finds its roots in ancient biblical narratives, intertwined with political, religious, and cultural dynamics. Understanding the deep connections between these two peoples and their shared heritage sheds light on the intricate nature of their struggles. As we already know, Israel and Palestine are both descendants of Abraham. And this is what God said to Abraham, Genesis 15:18-21, NIV. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, "To your descendants, I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites." It all started when God used Moses, who led the Israelites to freedom from their enslavement in Egypt. After leaving Egypt, they embarked on a 40-year journey through the wilderness. However, it's worth noting that neither Moses nor anyone over 20 years of age from that generation made it into the Promised Land. It was Joshua and Caleb who led the younger generation into what is now known as the Palestine area. Initially, this Promised Land was the territory of Canaan, which was inhabited by Canaanites. Joshua led the Israelites into this land, where they encountered and, in some cases, displaced the existing peoples in accordance with God's intentions. Subsequently, the Jewish people formed a tribal confederation and established the biblical kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Later, the Kingdom of Judea was established. From that point onward, these biblical kingdoms of Israel, Judah, and Judea were the only independent sovereign entities in the region now known as Palestine, Israel. No other groups succeeded in forming independent nations in this land after the Jewish people were driven out in 70 AD. Following the Roman conquest of Judea, Palestina became a Roman province. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the land came under the rule of the Christian Byzantine Empire. In 638 AD, an Arab Muslim caliph took control of Palestine from the Byzantine Empire, incorporating it into an Arab Muslim empire. During this period, many inhabitants of Palestine converted to Islam, but it never became an official state, nation, or country, even under Muslim rule. In 1099 AD, Christian crusaders from Europe took control of the Palestine area from the Muslims. However, they also did not establish it as an official state or country. Rather, they utilized it as a military outpost. Palestine subsequently passed into the hands of Syria, then the Ottoman Turks. After World War I, the British assumed control of Palestine from the Ottoman Turks, governing it temporarily under the League of Nations. Throughout these transitions and takeovers, no other groups or countries made Palestine an official state or country. Around the 1850s, Jewish people began returning to Palestine in small numbers. The land was arid, barren, and neglected. These Jewish settlers started cultivating and revitalizing the land through agricultural efforts, and it began to flourish and prosper. The claim is often made that Jewish people dislocated Palestinians from their land, but the historical reality is different. Jewish settlers initiated the development of the land in the 1850s through farming and cultivation. Arabs from surrounding Middle Eastern countries did not start returning until after the Jewish settlers had already begun this process. Thus, the Jewish people were the initial catalysts for the revitalization of the land. As World War II approached in the early 1930s, more Jewish people returned to Palestine. After the Holocaust, Many Jewish people from around the world sought safety and independence by migrating back to Palestine, their ancestral homeland. While Jewish people were returning to Palestine, so were other Arab populations, resulting in a diverse mix of inhabitants. Following World War II, on May 14, 1948, Israel officially declared its statehood, which marked the establishment of the modern State of Israel. Subsequently, the Arab population living in Israel, now referred to as Palestinians, began to assert that the land belonged to them, contesting Jewish claims to the territory. Shortly after the declaration of the State of Israel, neighboring Arab countries, including Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan, lent support to the Palestinian cause and engaged in conflicts with Israel. These historical events laid the foundation for the complex and ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The United Nations then became actively involved in attempting to establish peace and truces among these nations. During this period, a significant number of Arabs in Israel were displaced and forced to live in refugee camps in countries like Lebanon and Syria. These displaced Arabs came to be known as Palestinians. For a time, there was a semblance of peace, and the plight of the Palestinian refugees in these camps gradually faded from international awareness. However, the situation took a troublesome turn. Witnessing the suffering of these displaced Palestinians in neighboring Arab countries, a group known as the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, was formed. Organized resistance against Israel began to gain momentum in the 1950s, and the PLO was officially established in 1964. Their stated objective was the complete eradication of Israel. They held the Jewish people responsible for the displacement of Palestinians from Israel and resorted to acts of terrorism to wage war against them. Yasser Arafat assumed leadership of the PLO in 1969 and has been in conflict with Israel ever since. This ongoing war with Israel has persisted for the last 42 years. In the Old Testament, God conveyed to the Israelites, his chosen people, that despite his judgment upon them, he would always be their God. He also promised to bring them back to their homeland, Israel, in the latter days. Deuteronomy 33:5. Then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you and bring you back. He will bring you to the land that belonged to your ancestors, and you will take possession of it. He will make you more prosperous and numerous than your ancestors. Remarkably, you will find that following the Jewish people's expulsion from Israel in 70 AD, their homeland remained without any official declaration of statehood by the various groups that occupied it. It was not until 1948, when the Jewish people declared Israel an official state, that Israel was recognized as such. This demonstrated God's faithfulness to his covenant promise made to the Jewish people in the Old Testament that they would be returned to their homeland of Israel and regain possession of it in the latter days. It's essential to acknowledge the intricacies and the hardships endured by both Israelis and Palestinians over the years. Only through open communication, understanding, and a shared commitment to reconciliation can the path toward harmonious coexistence truly begin. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. I'm eager to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Stay tuned for more engaging content, and I look forward to our next journey together. See you soon.